of the crop, reinforcing that whatever we're dealing with, it can compartmentalize energy down to small sections that interact with cereal crops. So I would really like to talk with the gentleman who had just called in on a cell phone that sounded like it was about to go out. Maybe that's what happened.
His battery went. What did you think of a couple days ago, the European announcement that they may have found 5 to 7 planets in a different solar system, and also the fact that the NASA today, and Richard Hoagland was all over it today, Linda, they announced that they found 2 Saturn-type planets around the star, and maybe an Earth-sized planet, but they're not sure yet. Richard believes they're not releasing all the data on that yet.
Well, what was so important about the announcement today on the 2 planets, this is the very first time that we, from Earth, have ever had data that would show that there was gravitational interaction between 2 bodies, like 2 planets, around a star. So we have identification of, I believe it's 5 planets, but that's more distant. It's this new one, gravitational interaction, meaning they have hard data. That means that we're talking about something that's getting closer and closer to the idea of a solar system as we know it.
Okay, let's go back to the phones. David in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, you're on with Linda Moulton Howe. Go ahead, Dave.
George, how are you?
Good, all is okay, thank you.
George, I'm a retired naval submariner.
Super.
And, Linda, the problem you're hearing with the SEALs sounds like a propulsion system that was tested with the Navy submarines.
Explain.
You remember the movie Hunt for Red October, the Caterpillar Drive?
Yes.
Well, I think you should look no further than the SSN-21.
Is it sucking them in, Dave?
Yes.
Aha.
And they're getting caught. There's a, like a grain feed type device inside. It's a screw that's moving the water forwards and aft.
Dave?
Yes.
Why would that particular submarine be parked off of just St. Andrews Bay and North England?
Why not?
Well, nobody to date in 2 years has identified anything in the waters off of the beaches where the animals have been found as being related in any way. They've been looking. In that first half hour, I was stressing, and the interview ended up on Professor Tompkins, Dr. Thompson, saying that they are not, so far, they have not identified any equipment, machinery, boats, or any other technology that would explain what they are finding in their necropsies of the seals.
Linda, 15 years ago, the British fishermen coming out of Portsmouth were complaining that large animals were pulling their boats and their nets and almost pulling their boats underwater. What it was the British submarines would sink before they got to a safe dive depth and were going out underwater and catching their nets and pulling the boats and everything out. And that was what was causing that. American submarines operate right in that area all the time. And something could happen to one of these animals or a group of these animals, and the boat would be 500 miles away before they ever found out what happened.
Well, there's been at least 52 over 2 years, and if anybody listening has any firsthand information about what might be happening off of St. Andrews Bay in Scotland and Norfolk beaches in England, please contact me at earthfiles@earthfiles.com, and I will ensure that any requests for anonymity will be honored. But I am very interested in hard, substantive data. There's lots of speculation, but right now I know that the authorities in the UK don't have any hard data. And so I'm open to hearing what might be provable hard data.
Just bizarre. So many things going on around this planet. What was your take? We really haven't had a chance to talk with you about the oil leak in the Gulf of Mexico, which the news seems to have just faded away now, Linda.
Well, remember when I did that interview with Professor Kessler the same week that they came out of the Gulf doing the methane investigation. It was on Coast just shortly thereafter. And I still think that that is an extremely important interview and extremely interesting and important research because they found so much dense methane between the bottom where the hole was and up 1/3 of a mile. Remember, the rig was a mile above the hole, but where they found the concentration of methane was from what we'll call the seabed up 1/3 of the mile. And when they got up into the upper 2/3 of the waters, they were not finding those concentrations of methane. But remember, the concentration of methane in that bottom third was, using Professor Kessler's own words, 1,000,000 times the amount of methane that would normally have been there and might be unprecedented. Well, that has got to have an impact. That methane, they keep talking about that the oil has disappeared. I don't buy that. I think that there are scientists who are doing a lot of work and they have the same impression that there are layers down there in the Gulf. And that methane layer and that work by Professor Kessler, I still think is really significant. And I understand they are trying to get federal funding to go back and try to do more measurements, because this is the bad thing about concentrations of methane underwater. Depending upon what happens to the bacteria that are eating that methane and using up the oxygen, he used the term himself. What we're worried about is a gigantic dead zone in the Gulf 2 years from now.
Could be devastating. Now, yesterday they released a report that there's new bacteria that they have now found that's been eating the oil and doesn't deplete the oxygen. Where'd that come from all of a sudden?
I don't know. I mean, that is brand new, and I'm certainly happy to look into it, but I really think that it is safe to say that the Gulf is not out of the woods yet. I wish it were, but I think that there are dominoes yet to fall.
Well, I think so, too. Next up, Salt Lake City we go. It's Cole's turn on Coast to Coast. Hi, Cole.
Hi, George. How you doing? Fascinating show.
Yes.
I actually have a question for both of you. I found this video on YouTube called A New Swirl Order, and it actually talks about crop circles. And it kind of describes about the caller out of California, how he saw the wheat going down in a clockwise motion.
Right.
They've actually captured 2 orbs actually rotating around each other and creating a crop circle. I wondered if you had seen it and wanted your opinion about it.
Oh, the orbs in relationship to crop circles, that goes back into eyewitness sightings in the 70s, the 80s, the 90s. I've seen the lights myself moving over the tops of crops and in the wood, on top of a hill where there were trees. When it comes to the issue of somebody photographing or videotaping actual orbs doing the crop formation, there is this famous, it's a videotape, I was trying to remember, I think it goes back to the mid-90s, and it was at Oliver's Castle. And it is the famous video in which you see 3 lights come in from, I think, the left side of the frame, and then you see what was really quite a gigantic formation of 6 spokes that the pattern goes down. And that video was kind of leaked out through a pub, and for quite a while it caused a huge sensation. And then some people decided that the owner of the camera worked for a Swindon video production house and that he had done this as a hoax, and it became a very messy story. And to this day, I personally think that the jury has always been out on that video. I don't think it was proved one way or the other. But all of the misinformation about it may have been provoked because it's very clear that governments don't want us to know about crop formations, and they are a really mysterious force.
And Linda, we'll come back with some final phone calls with you in just a moment on Coast to Coast AM. Hey, just for a little future program note for you, we will be having a live program for you on Labor Day Monday night. So you know the routine, holiday scheduled on work days, we'll be here for you. So we'll be doing that. Let's come back and take final phone calls with Linda Moulton Howe right here on Coast to Coast AM. And welcome back to Coast to Coast. We're with Linda Moulton Howe. We'll take your calls. Linda, any speaking engagements for you upcoming?
Yeah, I'm going to Brazil at the end of September, and it's going to be focused around crop formations, and there will be 2 or 3 people from the UK and a couple of us from the United States, and it will be interesting to see what the Portuguese, the residents in Sao Paulo and Rio de Janeiro, have they ever encountered anything that they haven't ever reported? That's one of the questions I'm interested in. And then, what is their reaction to what we're all going to show them from the work that we have done in another part of the world? So it will be very interesting. It'll be the first time in my particular traveling experience to see Rio de Janeiro. I don't know if you've been there.
Never. I've always wanted to go. But,
yeah.
Buy me a ticket, would you? Yeah.
I'll get you invited to the next one.
The next one, indeed. And by the way, my schedule, folks, just go to the calendar at coasttocoastam.com. It's down in the bottom left-hand corner. My next visit is going to be in the Bay Area, San Leandro, where I'm going to a UFO festival. Lots going on in the world of UFOs these days, Linda, huh?
You know, George, I don't know what it is, but you have faded away so far I cannot hear.
Really?
It has been going up and down, sort of like a waveform for just about the last 10 minutes, but that was the worst because I know you started to say something and then it was just completely nothing there.
Wow. Well, just hang with us. Are you hearing the calls okay? Let's go to Pamela in Studio City, California. Go ahead, Pam.
Hi. I'm going to try and make this quick. In 1997, when they had the lights over Arizona thing in March,
right?
I didn't even put this together until much later, but it was July 4th, and it was around 7:40 at night, which was still very light. I was driving east on Mulholland, which I know you know the area.
Yes.
I was driving, and I thought I was, from a distance, I thought, what an ugly color for a kite, a black kite.
Right.
And it seemed large, and I was, further I was going towards Laurel Canyon on Mulholland. It was getting closer, and I thought, oh, no, it's a hang glider, but it's still ugly. It's black. And then I was close to the dog park, and I realized, no, this is not a hang glider, and before I knew it, it was over me, and it was longer than a football field.
Okay.
And I know other people saw it because this one guy in a red truck almost got in a car accident when he pulled over. It was quiet and enormous, and the first thing that came to my mind was, oh, God, I should have seen that movie Independence Day because it came out the year earlier. But I had an instant camera in my car, and I tried to take a picture of it. When I've turned it in, I never got it back.
Really?
Yeah, but I just, I was trying to catch up to it, of course, and by the time I could make the left down the hill, it was way past my house. But I know at least 2 other people saw it.
Well, you are one of at least half a dozen people that I've interviewed about what I call the large triangle in the first phase of what happened on March 13th, 1997. And it was when Art Bell was doing Coast and Dreamland. I remember that one of the nights that I was on with Art for a long time was about what was happening